When a few months ago we aired episodes on the optimization of the human body and athlete performance, we couldn't even guess that this topic would cause so many positive reactions from our audience. In these episodes, basketball players talked about the way certain techniques and methods implemented by performance coach Mihajlović helped them prepare for tough seasons and made them feel better on the court. In a short span of time, Mr. Mihajlović showed us different perspective on the physical preparation of athletes, the ways to speed up their recovery and how players should be taken care of, on and off the court. Due to tremendous interest and wish of our audience to further explore the topic of optimization of the human body, we decided to delve into the importance of the immune system with Mr. Mihajlović. We analyze how the immune system affects the form of a team and the form of a player, and in which ways an unoptimized immune system can cause various conditions in the human body. In this episode, we will tackle the problem of athletes' injuries and the time necessary to elapse for the player to be able to return to the court. We will also discuss how athletes are treated in the clubs after suffering an injury, whether they have the support of the staff, and how much of a problem it is for a coach if a player is afraid of an injury. We discussed these topics that are often unpleasant for doctors, coaches, conditioning coaches, physiotherapists, and even athletes. With Mihajlović, performance coach at the Georgia national basketball team, a man who is trying to merge all methods and techniques he is using in sports to help athletes achieve the best possible results and maximize their efficiency. Alexander Džikić, basketball coach and head coach of the Georgia national basketball team. Besides his colossal knowledge of basketball, Mr. Džikić is very devoted to the well-being of his players. And Dr. Stuart Gilespi, an expert in immunology with whom Mr. Mihajlović cooperates closely in an attempt to locate and analyze physical problems caused by the immune system. We are convinced that this story will change your view on the physical preparation of athletes and inspire you to pay attention to your own well-being.
First of all, thank you for taking the time to talk to us about this topic. Is it known exactly what physical problem an athlete with a certain type of immune system can have, and how it develops over time?
That's a great question, and that sort of is all about how does the immune system work, right? And so the immune system drives inflammation. The immune system focuses on the inflammation. The immune system takes you either in an inflammatory or an out of inflammatory way. And so how your immune system is working or dysfunctional is important when it comes to injuries and when it comes to pain and inflammation. And so what we don't know about the immune system is that there's different types of immune system problems. And so what was once thought to be an immune problem is now we have to figure out what type of immune problem do you have. And so, for example, an allergic immune problem will give you a very puffy, very swollen joint, and that's an allergic immune system type, which is giving you pain and inflammation. There's also those athletes that get recurrent injuries, that get broken down joints all the time, they're tearing their body down. They have a catabolic type of immune system. These athletes don't get allergies, they get very much fevers, hot, sweaty. Then you have the ones who have histamine immune systems, where they get very itchy skin, they get very anxious, they get very fast heart rates. Histamine is also related to delayed onset muscle soreness and muscle problems and muscle pains, and also neuropathies and neuritis. And so there's different types of immune system giving you different types of mechanical injuries, mechanical problems. And so we have to figure out what immune type do you have to sort of really go more deeply into that. But certainly the immune system is paramount, is fundamental to figuring out what type of joint problem do you have.
To your knowledge, is there anywhere like organization, team, club, any level, even in individual sports, that people are doing some kind of, I'll use the word test in a lack of my knowledge about a topic, but people are testing, I mean, like, is there any tests that you guys can figure out what type of immune system you have, athlete have, and according to that maybe you can do something to help?
Absolutely, and to be honest, there's very few teams actually using the immune component as part of their sort of makeup, as part of their sort of way to prevent injuries and way to prevent disease problems in athletes. Very few teams are doing it, which is why if you're going to learn about the immune system, you're ahead of the game by sort of actually introducing this immune system component to injuries. It's fundamental to how an athlete heals and how an athlete responds to a trauma is their immune system. And so are there certain testing? Yes, there are. Is it just a simple blood test? No, there's not. There's immune tests now, there's saliva tests, there's digestive tests, there's stool samples which can figure out what immune type you might have and what immune problems you might have, whether it's toxins, whether it's an infection, whether it's stress related. And so there's a lot more testing nowadays that the medical doctors don't always perform. It's more of a functional medicine sort of doctor, more a sort of alternative medicine sort of doctor are doing private testing now to figure out what immune problems you may have. If we take an example of Dubai, if you take an example of how these sheikhs and these sort of very powerful people who have lots of money, they pay lots of money for these horses, like $12 million, $50 million for these horses. How they test horses is not via blood, it's via urine. And so when you're looking at performance, when you're looking at metabolic injuries, when you're looking at infections, when you're looking at pathogens, you actually look in the urine, not the blood samples anymore. And so if you want to go where the money is, if you want to go with the true sort of testing is required in horse racing, it's urine now. And so we're not using that in modern day sports or modern day athletes when we should be.
Would you add that type of test to something that we call like a basic medical test package that players are doing before the seasons in order to get a green light from a medical standpoint to start their contracts for the season?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so the basic metabolic panel or basic blood test doesn't measure immune system, doesn't measure the immune system at all.
Absolutely, as far as I know.
Nothing.
Not
and
to my knowledge.
Not at all. And so you have to actually ask for what's called antibodies, which you can measure in the blood these days. You can measure these things in the blood. And so if you're looking for joint issues, rheumatoid factors, you're looking for autoimmune antibodies, you actually have to ask them for them in the blood test. And so you can do that special screen for antibodies in blood. But to go a step further, look at stool samples, look at urine samples, do the complete package. If you're going to invest a lot of time in your athletes and invest a lot of money in your athletes, you may as well spend the extra few $100s on specialized testing to test these things.
It's kind of funny, actually, that the guys who are spending all that money, they don't want to protect their own investments. Call it projects or whatever it is.
Yeah.
They simply don't do it. Why is that? I don't know.
I agree. And so are we actually, if we're really sort of getting to the basis of health, the fundamentals of health, we should be testing a lot broader testing nowadays, especially to protect our athletes from future problems, for sure.
In addition to this correlation between immune system and injuries, so the main idea of implementing that is responding to demands of what the head coach wants in a practice. And injuries are part of the process for sure. Not only mechanical injuries, but the load management injuries. So we're trying to decrease that as much as possible. But that's not the only reason why we turn our heads towards the immune system, because not responding to demands, offensive, defensive, what the head coach wants, what the head coach puts on the players, it's also them not being able physically to respond, or focus-wise to respond, and cognitive-wise to respond of what he wants them to do. And when we try to implement different techniques, we try to manage the load, we try to manage the nervous system, and when we don't find the solution, then we try to understand what's happening with the immune system. And we have players all the time during the season going up and down, and we try to figure out what's happening with them. And load management is great, and he's one of the few coaches, at least that I know, that is super open to different ideas, because he understands that the range of factors influencing a player during the season is huge. So he's not focused only on basketball. He's like on the highest level of basketball, understanding of basketball, but he's, I would say, on the highest level of understanding all other factors influencing his own players being better. So the immune system is also a big part of us preventing them getting injured, understanding when and why they can potentially be injured. Supplement is a big thing right now as a trend, right, in the world. We are super kind of rejective towards the supplementation, because we understand that it can drive a good thing and it can drive a bad thing. So until we get familiar with their bodies and what they need, we're not gonna throw on them different supplements only because it says their performance will be better. No, we emphasize immune system, we emphasize the gut, we emphasize the nervous system, we emphasize the lymphatic system, and this is where we try to target also the athletes with the right supplements they need. So Stuart can tell us, for example, if we have a guy who is puffy and swollen and because of the allergies, and if we throw on him some kind of a supplement that is usually used, he can get worse. But if we target him with supplements that are in a range of what he needs, then he will be better, right?
Yeah, very much so. And so we always think that more is better, right? And so more supplements is better. And so if you want to be more performance, more strength, you take more supplements. But it's not always the right thing to do, particularly if you're dealing with an immune problem. And we talked before about your immune type and how your immune system can go in different directions. Supplements actually drive your immune system in certain directions. This is why some supplements can actually make someone feel worse, and some supplements can make someone feel better. And so first of all, you have to figure out what is that person's immune type. Do they have allergies? Are they taking something that's going to drive their allergies, which is going to make them worse? And so this is why we have to be very careful with supplements and not just give out the same protocol for everybody. And so this is where coaches, this is where we all have to sort of take an active role in figuring out someone's immune type, understand the immune type, because the immune type, not only does it drive inflammation, but immune type also drives healing. And so if we want our athletes to heal faster, we have to give them the right immune supplements that drive healing rather than driving inflammation. And so it's huge now. And if we're going to be going down the supplement pathway, at least take the right supplements and take them more focused and focus on their healing and immune systems rather than just giving out supplements just like that.
I work with Gilespi for how long? Like 8 years. So yeah, we went through different systems, and they were mostly very successful systems, overachieving systems. And I was always interested where his interest in different topics comes from, because it's not easy to implement something new in a system that goes. You have a trend, and you have a trend of a club, and you have a trend of a continent, and you have a trend of a league, and then you have habits of a player. So to bring something new, it's super demanding, and coaches are protective, and they are not going out of the box trying to implement. So I was maybe he can talk about it more. I was super interested why he was so open to it, what he saw as an opportunity to open towards those fields. So his perspective, why he was, it gave him like a glimpse, an idea that the team will be more efficient. What do you think?
Well, listen, it's connected. It's super connected to the personality of the coach. Then it's connected and should be based on what you have in your team. What type of athletes you have, what type of personalities you work with, what they can handle, what are the right paths of, where you should push them. Then you have to figure out what are a no during that process, like what you should not even try to do it. I mean, I'm not talking about basketball, I'm talking about, that work. Then, there are 3 hours at the start of every season, like splitting explaining them the rules of how we're gonna work as a group, explaining the roles and explaining them their responsibilities. And then once you start figuring out, once they start believing you, once they're like literally feel that you are honestly interested in their success, individual success.
And well-being.
And well-being. Basically, they start following you. That's the easier path. And then, like, if you as a person out of the sports, if you're the person with, like wide range of interest, obviously that will project on the way you're coaching or doing your job in any profession, you know. So it's not like something specific for type of, you know, people. Then it's connected to some other things. I believe it comes with experience. It comes with a level of coaching, a level of what you were doing in the past, what kind of people you were working with. I was super lucky that all my career I was on a pretty high level of basketball, and I had a chance to work for and work with great basketball minds and good people who were willing to share. You know, they were not unselfish people. And then I worked with also very good players who were willing to sacrifice for the success. And you know, like we're always talking about, hey, what's team chemistry? You know, like me and Stuart being buddies after practice, after games. Actually, I have my own definition. It's like everybody have their own private interests, you know, like, and once you're like ready to give up a part of your like private like interest, the sum of all those sacrifices, that's what I call team chemistry. And just to go back, once you have a team that you can work with, then maybe it's easier to be open for those kind of things. And then sometimes you play safe. And it's all understanding of you know, being in this profession. That's just like any, listen, for some coaches it's a question of life and death, being with a team or being released and fired. I was fired too many times, and it's fine. Most of the times I understand why I was fired. And I guess that's why they say you need to learn from your own past. So there is nothing that I could like super wise that I can tell people like, try to do this, try to be like that. No, not really. It's just personality. Are you like, you heard that before, you know, like that story about a table. If you're sitting, you know, on a table where you're the smartest guy, then maybe you should change where you're sitting. And I was lucky I was not the smartest guy on the table so many times. Sometimes I wasn't the smartest guy. I like that situations too, you know, but not too many times.
Each injury is a story on its own. And with each athlete, there is a different period that must pass in order to rehabilitate a particular injury. Is it possible to somehow shorten the recovery time from injuries?
For sure. And that's when you sort of understand what is that type of injury. And sort of this is where you sort of have to sort of be connected with your coaches, connected with your players, and they sort of understand what's going on. And so sometimes that injury could be a catabolic type of injury where you're tearing the body down, and that is a different sort of immune response when you're breaking things down. And so in that particular case, you want to be more anabolic with that type of injury. You want to actually build up that injury and be anabolic and sort of rest. But if you're going to do something with that injury, you have to be anabolic and take things that prevent the catabolic breakdown of an injury. So maybe some extra protein powders, some extra protein might help that healing process faster. Then you had the other type of injury, which is more of a puffy, more of a growth, more of a swollen type of injury where they're inflamed, their lymph nodes are swollen, their veins are swollen, their hands are swollen, their joints are puffy. And that's a different type of injury. And so that requires a different type of process to go on there in order to heal that injury. So learning about inflammation is run by the immune system, and also the immune system drives healing. And so if you want to drive healing processes in your clients, you have to understand what the immune system is doing. Why is it catabolic? Why is it puffy? Why aren't you healing faster than you should be? Why are you stuck in an inflammatory problem? And so sometimes taking away your limitations is better than trying to build something up. You take away what is preventing you from actually healing. And there's a lot of stuff going on there, like infections, like stress, like toxins. And your immune type is sort of preventing that healing process from taking place. And so if you understand that, then you can make it go faster for sure.
In addition to that, the next to immune system is the nervous system. So healing, it could be after an injury, but healing can be after practice. We have micro ruptures of fascia, of muscles, like high intensity practice brings like tearing down the body on a micro level. So we need in 24 hours, 48 hours, we need players to heal. So besides driving the immune system, we try to understand what is increasing their healing chances, like capabilities. And he understands that perfectly, and he's the one like giving an approach of implementing other ideas. So we talk a lot performance coaches about recovery practices, and I'm not so sure about it. You can maybe recover a system, but to recover a full body after high intensity, maybe not, because the nervous system is on fire. Sympathetic, they are becoming like too sympathetic. So in order to heal, you need to calm them down. So you don't need to give them a new info. So when we work, he's also decreasing the info verbally, what he's giving them. Like we do analysis, video analysis, so we decrease the volume of info that we're giving. We decrease all kind of information. We just try to like put them on a waves, like on a sea, on a boat, like just making them relax as much as possible, to shut the body down as much as possible, and then to drive the healing process as much as possible. So he's the one who understands that and follows that direction, right?
Yeah, then there's another thing. I mean, as a coach and as a doctor, as a performance coach, whatever, you need to understand something. And I think it's 100% true. Not all the players are the same. They are individuals. So what is good for Stuart maybe is not good for me, and vice versa. So you need to understand that, simply understand. And when you're trying to find the best way that will work for your group, because in a perfect world, in a basketball, believe me, we are super far, at least here in Europe, we are super far of individual approach to those processes of recovering, or helping players to be again on able to performers on a highest possible level. It's super hard. So, you need to know that you will not win all the battles, so you have to pick your battles, that's the whole saying. And what is also important, that the way you're planning what you're doing with them, you need to understand that not all of them will be super happy and with what you're doing, and not all of them will feel that it's 100% adjusted to who they are as athletes. But it is a team sport. So I guess that's something that we have to live with and keep on going. Just go back, I have a small question, short question for Stuart. Like, do you believe there is a connection between time of recovery and the level of understanding and trust between an athlete and a doctor? I feel that if they trust you and in your methods and what you're doing, for some reason, and I would like you to say something about it, they recover faster. You agree with that?
I 100%
I mean, is that something that just, for me, it's just something that comes from the experience? I mean, I have no knowledge to explain that scientifically, but just experience. I guess that's, is it true?
No, it's 100% true, not only in athletes, but also in the public as well.
Yeah.
And so that very first, like they say that, initial meetings are paramount. And so that initial consult, that initial chat that you have with someone is huge when it comes to establishing trust and establishing safety between a doctor and a player, between a coach and a doctor, and sort of that trust is huge. And so that's when they feel safe, they feel listened to. So sometimes these days there's not a customized approach, like you were saying before. It's more everything works for everybody and everything works the same.
It's a group approach, call it like that. Or whatever.
So doctors aren't really taking the time to find out individual differences anymore, and so you just get the same protocol based on whatever, based on a blood test or based on something. And so this customized approach is a way that the doctor can establish trust with that player. Is like taking that individual and making their circumstance as individualized as possible. You're listening to them, you're sort of understanding what they're going through, understanding their history, understanding their immune type. All this type of thing goes into sort of establishing that trust that you need to establish between a doctor, and it certainly does. If you can calm their nervous system, calm their immune system, they're going to heal faster. And that is all about trust, and it's all about working. And
I will tell you something, like based on our experience in the last 2 years, last 2 seasons, for example. It's kind of funny if if players once they figured out that he can fix them, whatever that means, they were more open to give up more in the practice.
For sure.
And then you simply go from level A to level B, from B to C. Obviously, there's always guys who are leaders and guys who are followers, chiefs and Indians, and whatever it is. Like, it's not good if you have everybody who wants to be chiefs also. But it's the things are super clear that once they believe in what you're doing before the practice and how you fix them after practice, they are more open to like do more, simply like that. It's like that, at least based on our experience from the last 2 seasons.
There's a doctor in the US called Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he's written some books about what's called the biology of belief. And so your biochemistry, your physical nature is all determined by your thought patterns and the way of feeling safe and the way of trusting, the way of believing in each other. And that's huge, I think, for these team sports, is that biology of belief and safety. And I think, as you say, you do more if you feel safe. I think you do be more adventurous, be more highly performed if you feel safe. And so most people think it's the other way around. You have to be driven. You have to be sort of a bit more outrageous, a bit more unsafe to be high performance. But I think it's the opposite. I think you feel safe and feel trust.
You think how Philip bring players back in a few weeks? Can you tell us more about it?
Is that a question?
Yes.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
A few weeks, it's a super long period.
Oh, sorry.
No,
So a few days. Few days.
No, listen, if you keep on bringing them in few weeks, I mean, I need a new Philip. I guess it's related to what we were talking right now. I know how I feel, like a zillion times I come to him, just go and check on Stuart, just ask him what it is and fix him. I don't even want to know. He goes and he say, yeah, it's serious, not serious, it's 1 day, it's 2 days, or just maybe he needs to stop now, or he needs to not do things, blah, blah, blah. But you need to understand, I mean, you cannot repeat that enough times. There is a different understanding of time in sports. 2 weeks in our lives is 5 games, for example. 5 games is a lot. 2 games in I will use the term, I don't know the better one, in a general medicine. 2 weeks is a short period.
Very short.
Just, hey, come I'll check on you in 2 weeks. And you're like, yeah, that's it. 2 weeks for us, it's huge. I don't have time. I fight with time. I fight with my opponents. I have hundreds of problems, every coach. Things that you have to control, things that you have to avoid, things that you have to underline, things that you have to, stress, push for it. And, obviously you want to have less things that you have to spend your energy to. And then when somebody is super relaxed about injured players, I'm not the nicest person on the planet. Honestly, when people are, oh yeah, don't worry, it's 2 weeks. What do you mean 2 weeks? And then, yeah, but I started working in 91. As a head coach, as assistant, I was not working with guys who were pushing players to perform when they're not 100%, when they're not ready. We never forced athletes to, be a part of the game. And for me, I'm even obsessed with the players' health. Maybe I think about that too much. So I'm not sure that's the best way, but that's my way. So it is what it is.
I think that's the only way, to be honest, and I applaud you for doing that. It is the only way, it's looking after your players' health. That is the only way. So not only during their careers, but post-careers as well, right? And so.
Well, listen, some organizations, some coaches in different sports were super successful with a different approach. You injured, Philip gets your spot. So it's just, hey, next one, please, next one, please. Same with coaches. You'll find so many owners and GMs understanding the sports as I cannot change 15 players, but I can change the coach, which I will not be honest about it right now, about those things.
Well, essentially, the approach we're trying to develop here is by working on the two fastest systems in the body. Are your nervous system, which is the fastest. I mean, you can make changes in seconds, right? And your immune system, which again is a very fast system, you make changes in your immune system in 2 or 3 days. And so a fever, how long is a fever supposed to last? 2 or 3 days. That's how quickly you can get rid of an infection. And so if you're trying to implement programs into a team, you have to be looking at that 3-day threshold. For immune system, 3 seconds, 3 minutes. But your immune system, 2 or 3 days. This is why 2 weeks is even too long in my world. 2 weeks is too long. And so we're looking to see changes in 3 days when you're working with the immune system. And so,
as Gilles said, we're fighting time, so we often get questions, so why are you doing all that stuff? Like, why you go in direction of immune system? Why you go in direction of nervous system? Why him as a head coach is trying to take care of their families, thinking about their wives, thinking about their kids. So, and that is a lot of factors. So you don't have to do it. This is just one of the styles, but we believe in this style and it gives us results. So
yeah, it's not the only way. Just to make it clear, it's
yes.
not the only way. It's not the most successful way, but it's the way we are doing things. That's all. I mean, just
yeah,
just to make it clear.
It works for us. So that's why we follow it. So we're trying to think how we can beat time. Like that's why we look into those systems. So and also in basketball, he searches for ways to implement things that are going to be shorter, like how he can reach something in basketball that's going to spend less time, less minutes, less repetition, less days.
Time all the time.
Yes, time. So that's why we go into immune system, because often we tend to put load and then bodies are now like overloaded with informations and they struggle. You simply need to like move the load off so then they can rise, they can explode. And we see that so often with the nervous system, with the immune system, and changing the approach, how we treat performance and how we treat the practice, how we make the periodization.
Just to give you a simple example. It's not the secret, every team is preparing for the other team. I mean, coaches using different ways of, we call it scouting, preparing for the next game, whatever it is, analyzing what you're doing, analyzing the opponents, looking for ways to win. And actually, I was doing that way different than once we started. We changed it, and we were talking about people when they say like, hey, it's overload of work. It could be overload of information, and basically the projection of the body is pretty much the same, as I understand. Again, these two have more scientific knowledge about it than me, but I figured it out. I mean, I was just watching my players, like overload information, it's the same as overload of work. So for example, we are having our meetings after the practices. We first do some things, we introduce on the floor, we are going through that, and then we show them in a video meetings after the practice, which is kind of unusual, but it is how we are doing things.
Yeah. So this is the idea of having students here in Belgrade, and so we did a masterclass this weekend, and it was super successful, and we're gonna repeat it in October again, like giving another tool possibly to the physiotherapists and coaches to try to fix problems, going a step further. But also immune system can be overloaded. You can be overloaded also in immune system. So and that's high priority, right? Like you can be overloaded with information, like you can be overloaded with emotions, like you can be overloaded with the movement. You can be, your immune system, certain type, can be overloaded.
Yeah, and it's just focus. It's focus, isn't it? Rather than time, it's efficiency, it's focus. And so try not to think of things in time, although we need to do things quickly. But in our efforts to do things quickly, we got to take the information and then focus it on that particular player and do a more customized approach to these things. But focus is key here, and sometimes experience matters, and seeing patterns in your players matters, and having that experience matters. And so even having experience with autoimmune disease matters in terms of like, what are you looking for in order to get a much more focused approach in how we deal with these things and get things done faster, for sure.
In addition to bad emotions, which Philip and I had the opportunity to talk about earlier, fatigue, overtraining, insufficient physical preparation and inexperience are some of the most common factors that affect injuries in athletes.
Definitely. This is something that we emphasize a lot. Emotions, it's still maybe a taboo topic, or a topic that is not so common. But we recognize that players go through like a roller coaster of emotions. It's a high emotional environment, so we have a peak of emotion, high intensity emotions at the evening, and then you have to calm down the nervous system, and then next day you have again a peak. And the things that you live in maybe 7 weeks in sports athletes, what they experience emotion-wise, maybe on an average person you experience in a year, right? And those roller coasters going up and down, it spends your body so much. It brings the tension of the body, it changes the movement, it changes how they absorb the information that he's giving them. So yes, we are putting a lot of effort trying to understand emotions in general, and trying to understand connection in our players between emotions and I don't know what's your experience with it, working with the immune system and emotions. So
yes, I mean, I'm sure being overworked, overloaded, we think emotions and physical problems are separate. Like, oh, you have an emotional problem, therefore you must be weak in the mind, or you must be weak socially, or you must have a weak nervous system, right? But it's actually, there's so much linkage now between physical problems and emotional problems. I mean, you can't sort of separate the two. I mean, they combine. And so a physical injury will cause anxiety and depression. Anxiety and depression will cause a physical injury. It's a two-way street. You have to work on both of these things. And so in the past, you just used to work on one thing, just the knee, just a physical problem. But if you worked on the emotional problem behind that physical problem, you get much quicker and faster results. And so this is where, I know we're talking about emotional health now, but it's so important when it comes to physical problems and vice versa, that you have to talk about both. You can't ignore one or the other.
As a top basketball coach, you have worked with a lot of basketball players. Fear of injuries is something that can reduce a top player to an average player.
Oh, listen, one of the real tools that you have as a coach is selection process. So just to make it super simple, try to avoid that type of player. Try to avoid. If you recognize that something like you said, how you said it, fear of
injuries,
of injuries, of getting injured. Listen, if you don't have to sign that type of player or work that type of player, try to avoid him. If he's already in a team, then I think it's super important to figure out the roots of those fears. And that's the part that Philip is talking about. We're talking about emotional approach to the players, and it is super hard to open up the players. It's super hard to open up the players, to achieve that level of trust and mutual understanding, so they open up to you in order for you to help them. That's super hard. That's super painful even for the person who is trying to help the player. You have to pay for that too. I mean, it takes a lot of energy from that person who is trying to help the players with that. But you know, fear of injuries, I don't know. I mean, injuries are part of the business. Historically, my teams don't have too many injuries. There are different types of injuries. Mechanical injuries is something that you have to accept. But then, you know, some other injuries, and like, how you call them, hard injuries or super serious injuries. I didn't have too many of them in my career, but again, it's the whole approach to that. And believe me, players know. Sometimes they will accept to play for the certain type of coach, knowing that, hey, I'm healthy with him, you know, I enjoy being there, blah, blah, blah. Because like, there is I think that so many fans, people who follow sports, they believe that all athletes are soldiers. And that's super far from the truth. Not all of them are soldiers. Not all of them are like, you know, yes, no, super straight and all that. So they are individuals. Try to figure out each one of them, you know, individually, especially in this one, then put them together as a group. Try to figure out how they can function together, and then, you know, just point them in the right direction. But to go back to your question, if you can avoid that, it is the same as, hey, try to avoid selfish player. Try to avoid, you know, bad person. You don't need that in your locker room. But it's not like in sports. It's like it's in life like that. You don't want to interact with a certain type of people. Simply, you don't find that good for yourself. It's no benefit in that type of relationships.
As for the tearing of tendons and ligaments, doctors don't always resort to surgery. Instead, they try to heal the type of injury with injections. Is it a good approach, and how do you see that problem, doctor?
As in terms of a catabolic type of injury, right? When you're breaking the body down, right? And so understanding that it is a catabolic problem, you're breaking the body down. And so, is it recurrent, that injury? Does it happen all the time? And so, and is it healing with scar tissue? Is it given the right time to heal? And so sometimes you can get recurrent injuries because of a scar tissue problem or an old injury that hasn't healed properly. And so obviously you'd like to prevent surgery because surgery has its own complications. You might bring in new infections into that area. And also when you cut open a tendon, when you cut open a joint, then you are increasing inflammation, you are tearing the body down, and possibly have the idea of increasing scar tissue in that joint, which is weaker for future injuries. And so ideally, you never train when you're sick. You don't like to train when you're sick, and you don't like to train when you have tears, micro tears. And so we've all talked about the root cause of some of these things. Emotions is one of them. Infections is also a root cause of some of these sort of micro tears that is happening in the heart, happening in the tendons, happening in your cardiovascular tissues, are micro tears caused not only through physical injuries but infectious injuries. And so and it's happening a lot more these days post-COVID, post the pandemic, that we're seeing a lot of these more micro tears and inflammation of the joints and the tendons. And so that isn't a tendon problem, that isn't a joint problem, that's an infection problem. And so sometimes we have to take away some of these infections, which are inside our tissues. They're embedded in our fascia, in our joints. And so sometimes you have to take those problems away before you can try and heal somebody. But Also, you can also take some extra sort of materials that help you with the healing process in terms of extra collagen, extra protein, extra amino acids, extra minerals, which actually drive that healing process. Vitamin C drives collagen production. Vitamin C drives tendon healing. And also sort of, you know, as you say, sort of look at the athletes involved, look at what they're going through. Do they have lack of sleep? Do they have allergies? Do they have histamine issues? Are they stuck in inflammatory problems? And when they are, you can't heal when you're defending. And so you can't have proper healing if you're stuck in this nervous system fight-flight. And so maybe that is the cause of why these injuries aren't healing faster than they should. And so it's a whole big issue now, a whole big problem. And don't be afraid to sort of go into these areas where you think you might be weaker. Investigate these things, because you only learn these things from repetition, from experiencing these things. And so this is why sort of experience is key when it comes to healing injuries.
Bone and muscle injuries are the most common injuries that athletes have, from sprains, bursitis, and bone fractures. For each of these injuries, does the time set for rest, rehabilitation, and return from injury to practice have to be endured?
Well, it depends. Depends of character of an injury. It depends what system is jeopardized. So, if it's a nervous system, the things that we do, you can restart the muscle, the tendon, the ligament within the seconds. If it's a mechanical, if there is a tear, then it depends again how strong your immune system is, how overloaded your immune system is. So if you're full of viruses and bacteria, for sure you're gonna heal slower. And we have a couple of players that we know, that we discussed, they didn't play for us, but with the bone fractures and the muscle tears, they struggle to recover from, like, way beyond the recovery time. This is average for that kind of injury. So definitely, but first we have to put the injury in some group and give it a character to understand, to understand what we need to heal on, which system is at risk, which system is overloaded, and then approach it with a certain method.
Coach, can you tell us how did the basketball players react to the new approach to their recovery and injury prevention?
Listen, some of the, it's super important. Like I never rush them out of their recovery. Like I don't put extra pressure. I understand that injury is a specific, you know, situation for their bodies. You know, they're not as functional as they need to be. I understand that produces extra stress. And, you know, I'm not helping with, hey, I need you in 4 days. This and that. I mean, and once they understand that, they simply start following, you know, you, and they start following the guys working in the medical staff. You know, just it is simple as that. But there's also another thing. We use the phrase 20/4, meaning that as a coach you have a control over them, like direct control over them. Let's say 4 hours out of 24 hours. So of course, in the perfect world, your players are super disciplined. They take care of their bodies. They live healthy lives. They take care of what they eat, how they rest, how they handle situations. In the real world, it's different. To be honest, I explain them what I'm expecting, and they understand that I'm interested in their success, mix of those two. They start following our protocols. I am super aware that they will get infos and maybe different type of infos and answers from somebody else. But to be honest, on the certain point, I don't care. As long as I'm the guy who's running the show, I'm the guy who's giving orders. So sometimes you have to have that approach.
That was interesting, that 20 hours and 20 and 4, right? And
Yeah.
so you're only with your athletes for 4 hours a day,
4 or
right?
5, I mean, just, yeah.
So that's a very small percentage, right? 20% of
Well,
of
sounds
actually
better
their
than
life.
19.5.
No, I agree with that. No, but I mean, it's just amazing how much trust you have to have in your player that when they go away for 20 hours of the day, they're actually implementing good, healthy habits, right?
Yeah.
You don't know for sure, right?
No, you cannot.
You cannot know for sure. So sleep habits and sort of nutritional habits and eating the right
Exactly.
diets, you know.
The relationship habits.
Relationship habits, toxic relationships, all this kind of stuff, right? And so are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? And so it all falls on you because you're the head coach, you're the main guy, right? And
Yeah.
so, but a lot of the time it's their responsibility too sometimes, especially if they're 20 hours of the day they're away from you.
And again, Stuart, it goes back to selection.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean,
But people-
listen, some things happened to me in the past. I promised to myself, I will not work anymore ever with a certain type of players.
Right.
Ever.
Definitely.
Never.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's interesting too from my point of view. When we're working with clients, there's certain clients you won't take on either,
sure.
because you know they're not going to follow the protocol, right? And so it's interesting how you have that as well in your field.
But, sorry for interruption, but you in Serbia, we interrupt people a lot.
It's okay. You're quite shy.
It's super connected. It's super connected
Yeah.
to your bank account and your style of living. I'm just to keep it real.
Right.
More money in bank,
More smiling.
you're more ready for, this and that.
Yeah.
You care less if somebody is not sharing your values, let's put it this way. But when you're hungry, then, sometimes, listen, you heard that before. While you're climbing to the top, you follow the rules. Once you're on the top, you change the rules. I'm not on the top, I'm super far. But, on my small top, somewhere on the way to the big top, sometimes you can change the rules, and that's just things that you promise to yourself or not. Like, hey, these are things I'm not doing, and that's it. So.
And more often it's the things you don't do rather than things you do that actually make the differences, right? So you've got to eliminate the bad things rather than try and implement so many good things in your life, right?
Yeah, definitely. So people are often saying, yeah, should you supposed to control those 20 hours? Like, give them freedom, like they're not machines. And that's definitely true, but you can pinpoint to maybe more efficient techniques and methods and maybe give them a path that they will feel it's more efficient, so they will follow themselves, so you don't have to control them. So if you give them a tool, immune system, and give them an explanation and give them a result, you don't have to control them, but you have to give them a opportunity for them to select what is better.
Yeah, but they're coming from different backgrounds, Some guys are coming from the winning teams, winning systems. Some guys are super young, they have no knowledge. They don't even think about it, what they need to do during those 20 hours in order to perform on their max level. They just don't understand.
And in the early years, you're invincible. You can do whatever you want when you go home 20 hours.
Of course. Sometimes you're so talented that you can live the worst type of life and you still can be on a very good level, very high level. Then there is always a question, just imagine how good you would be if, but again, those are scenarios for the movies.
And the last question for this episode, the best recommendation of Dr. Stewart addressed to athletes?
Best recommendation?
Yeah. Go to law school.
Sleep for sure. Sleep, nervous system, immune system. Don't always go after where the problem is presenting. Think globally. Think about sort of sleep and nervous system and immune system. Don't just think about pain and suffering in your knee. It's usually coming from somewhere else.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.